It is a busy, busy Monday. We have here Gary Sasse, the money man, in studio. You can hear the change rattling around in his pockets.
No change.
No change.
No
It is
change.
all, is it, what are those, bearer bonds or something?
Credit
What-
cards.
Credit cards. Um, And do they if it's City of Providence issued, they have big balances on all those credit cards.
Well, I don't.
And we're going to talk about a few things. What do you want to kick off with? Your pick. Jump ball. Let's go St. Joe's. St.
That's
Joe's.
fine.
Pretty significant breaking news in the state of Rhode Island about nearly 3,000 pension retirees and eligible retirees in the St. Joseph's Health Services Pension Fund. That fund has been is now in receivership. Steve Del Sesto's been appointed to be the receiver. Go Local's been breaking a significant number of stories about it, including one today in which it looks to be that there's about a deficit of about $160 million and about $80 million worth in resources left.
Assets.
About $86 million, I think, there. How do we get ourselves into a situation like this?
This, I have never seen anything like this. I've seen pension funds get into trouble. We have a lot of public, local pension funds
Sure.
in this state are still in trouble. But it faces insolvency, 3 years after the merger between Charter Care and Health Partners and the private company, Prospect out in California.
Yeah.
I don't know what people were thinking about, because the deal, as you guys have reported, was that Prospect put $14 million into the fund. It increased the fund. It was about 90% funded, which is a good, not great, it's a good number. And then 3 years later, we're sitting here with this crisis. What apparently happened, and I don't know the details, is that the fund must have become totally reliant on earnings. And the earnings have, been modest. Certainly were modest in most pension funds in 14 and 15, better in 16 and 17. I don't know if the employees, the active employees, were making contributions.
No, they're
or
not.
They were
Yeah.
not. So you have one source of funds, and then you just down the principal until you come to a point where you can't meet your obligations. They have, I understand, about money to meet 10 years of obligations, and they have 40 to 50 years of obligations out there. So it is one of the biggest snafus and one of the most unexplainable snafus I've ever heard. And we need to get to the bottom of why this situation developed. It's not going to make the pensioners feel any better when they get a haircut, but this thing can never happen again, and we have to find out how it happened, why it happened. One of the unfortunate things is that the Pension Benefit Guarantee Commission, the federal commission, will backstop pensions. But this pension was a religious
Yeah,
pension.
it was a church
Right.
church fund.
It was
That's the-
exempted, but in 2018, they're going to have to start paying money into premiums into the GB.
Well, and that's why they've eradicated themselves. The de facto what triggered the fund to petition for receivership is notification from the Catholic Church that they were exiting, which then set off this this function. I mean, St. Joseph's Hospital for decades was underfunded. It was running massive deficits when it merged into Roger Williams Medical Center at the time, back in '08 or '09. At that point, when it went and Roger Williams and St. Joe's merged into Charter Care, the 13 990 tax returns show that that fund had a deficit of $76 million. And I think there's been a little sleight of hand as to 90% funded. 90% funded was, for that point at that second in time, especially if there was a exit from the fund, it was not that there was enough resources to fund all the retirees for the period of time. According to the actuarials, they needed contributions of $20 and $30 million on an annual basis since that merger, and there's been no contribution by anyone. So
So what now? It's administered by a board.
It is administered by a nonprofit board.
There are three gentlemen on the board.
There are three gentlemen on the board according to the last 990. We don't have any other data as to who's on the board
And
now.
who was the actuary? Who's preparing the actuary?
That was
report?
Angel.
Okay. East Providence?
East Providence, a local firm, 10 people at that firm. They're not answering any questions. Angel refuses to answer any questions. We're getting into shutdown period right now.
Well, these people may not be answering questions because they may be potential liabilities.
Yeah.
And I don't know what kind of advice they're getting, but we have this, board, obviously an unprofessional board. We have a small system, not requiring employees to make contributions. The employer effectively is orphaned the plan.
Yeah, that's right.
They gave $14 million, said, goodbye, have fun.
That's right.
Hope you enjoy the car. And now we come to this issue. But this issue should have been caught. There was going to be a problem with this pension system. I don't know what the benefits are, but when you're $160 million of unfunded liability for 3,000 people, it's hard to play catch-up with those kinds of numbers.
Absolutely.
But let's go back a couple of steps. Before any hospital could merge or be bought, there's a process.
Yeah.
I was critical of the process back when the Hospital Conversion Act was enacted because I wasn't clear what role an attorney general should play. To me, it was just more regulatory red tape and paperwork. But maybe I was wrong. We now have a regulatory process where the attorney general is involved, and the law is very clear. The law requires that the attorney general has to determine the impact, and he has to assess the impact of the merger or the acquisition on healthcare. He also has to assess the impact on the needs of employees. It's very clear in the statute, and then he has to look at the overall public interest. And the law does, as I recall, I haven't looked at it for a few years, but I think the law does stipulate that one of the things the attorney general is supposed to look at is the wellness of all assets, charitable assets.
That's right. That's exactly correct.
Including the pension fund. So my question is, what happened? And the attorney general, with this cockamamie excuse that, well, it was never in the law where I would operate a pension system or I had any kind of responsibility for it. Due diligence requires